welcome to Stormwater Program Coordinator Training. My name's Hannah Majiri. I'm the case manager for Camden, Cumberland, and Warren counties. So if you're part of those counties, you may recognize my name. Hello. I'll start things off, and then I'll hand the presentation over to some of the other members in the Stormwater Permitting Unit to continue. So we created this training because we've received requests for it from SPCs over the years, particularly those who are new to the role and want to make sure they're understanding the permit requirements correctly. This training is a way to ensure all SPCs hear the same information and have an opportunity to discuss questions and concerns. We have 101 new Tier A permittees who were formerly classified as Tier B and a handful of new public complex permittees as well. So this training should be helpful as they adjust. It is mandatory for all SPCs to attend once per permit cycle. So if you retire or change jobs, your successor will need to attend the next available session. Our plan is to do this twice each year, though we may hold extra sessions since it's a relatively new program and we like to catch as many people as we can as early as possible. As mentioned, we are recording today's session and we'll post the recording and the slides on our MS4 webpage. It will be there for you to review and to share with others in your stormwater program if you want to. And if you do leave your position, your successor can watch the recording to hold them over until the next live session. We expect this to last roughly 3 hours, so we'll take a couple of short breaks to address some questions and comments from the chat. Since this training is mandatory, we will be monitoring attendance to make sure the SPC for every town and public complex has been trained. Additionally, there will be a survey sent out after the session that will be mandatory for all attendees to complete before they will receive their certificate. Our goal is to explain the role of the Stormwater Program Coordinator and to describe what is expected for compliance with all permit conditions. Since this is a combined training, we will also highlight any differences between Tier A and public complex permittees. After this, we'll give you some helpful tips about the mapping assistance we provide and the NJDEP online portal. With any time remaining at the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A session. Since this is a combined training, you may see these symbols appear on the slide or a portion of the slide. If you see the symbol, it only pertains to that permittee. If you see no symbol, it applies to all permittees. Today, we will only be talking about Tier A and public complex. We'll start with the responsibilities of the Stormwater Program Coordinator and show you some of the department's resources on our website. SPCs serve as the main point of contact in your municipality or public complex for all things stormwater. In most cases, this job goes to the public works or maintenance supervisor or your engineer, though we also have clerks and mayors themselves filling this role too. Some are hired through private consulting firms and may work for multiple permittees. Please be sure to let your MS4 case manager know who the SPC for your town or public complex is. We send all key stormwater correspondence to the SPC, so it's important that we have the correct contact information. We'll go into more detail about each of these bullet points as we go through the presentation, but in a nutshell, this is what the SPC job entails. As the SPC, you will receive correspondence from the department regarding permit compliance issues. You may not be the one to personally do all of the stormwater work, but you are responsible for making sure things get done in a way that complies with your permit. You will need to prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan, or an SP3, which is a document that details each permit requirement and explains your stormwater program. If you haven't already, you'll submit your most updated SP3 to the department, post it on your webpage, review it each year, and use it during annual employee training. Since the Tier A and public complex permits were both recently renewed, we have new SP3 templates for you to use, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. You're also responsible for making sure that all required submissions are made to the department and the county, if necessary, on time. You'll make sure the appropriate information is posted on a dedicated stormwater webpage. You'll need to make sure that public notices and outreach opportunities are communicated properly to residents and businesses in your town. This applies to any public complex that has residents living on your property. You'll also need to make sure everyone who has a role in the stormwater program gets the correct training. You must submit the annual report and the documents that get attached to it as early as January 1st, but no later than May 1st each year. And lastly, you need to keep accurate and complete records of your stormwater activities. Before we get into the permit conditions, I want to show you the department's MS4 webpage where you can find details about everything we're going to talk about today. There are links to the permits, compliance schedules, guidance on the permit conditions, fillable templates and forms, sample materials, NJDEP online, a list of MS4 case managers by county, and other related resources. When we make any significant updates or create new materials, we will send a notice via email to the SPC and we'll post it on this webpage. For Tier A permittees, you should all have heard by now about the stormwater assistance grants we have for all towns. Original Tier A's can receive up to $25,000 and new Tier A towns can receive up to $75,000. Applicants will receive one disbursement once an application is approved, and the second disbursement once we receive either a completed MS4 infrastructure map for original Tier A's or a completed SP3 for new Tier A's. Out of 557 municipalities, only a handful have not yet applied. If you haven't already applied, the deadline has been extended to March 31st of this year. Okay, let's get started and go through each of the permit conditions. Let's first talk about creating and maintaining a stormwater pollution prevention plan, also known as the SPPP or SP3. This document could be considered your stormwater manual, a how-to for staff to know what they need to do, how to do it, and when to do it. All the conditions of the MS4 permit need to be included in your SP3, where you will describe the unique details of how your town or public complex is meeting the conditions. It should be thorough enough for someone to pick it up and have a pretty good idea of how to carry out operations. Original Tier A towns and existing public complex permittees should already have an SP3, and new Tier A permittees and new public complex permittees need to create theirs. When you fill it out, please don't leave anything blank. For the areas that are not yet due, please just give a high-level description of the steps you'll take to satisfy the permit condition. Then, once you actually start doing that activity, you can update that section with a more concrete description of the program that you have in place. You'll be reviewing it annually, so just add it then and send a fresh copy to us whenever you make updates. The department does have a template that you can work from, which you're not required to use, but it will guarantee that you cover every permit condition. It's available as a fillable PDF on our webpage. There's a new template that follows the 2023 Tier A permit and the 2024 Public Complex permit, so please ensure you're using the correct template. As mentioned, once it's complete, the SP3 needs to make sure that it's posted on your webpage, discussed during annual training of staff, and submitted to the department via NJDEP online through the Stormwater Document Submittal Service, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. So our biggest tip that we have is to take advantage of this template, and we also have sample SP3s that you can use. As mentioned, it's a fill-in-the-blank style template, and we have a sample if you want to get an idea of how to fill it out. The links here on the slides will take you to your appropriate SP3 template and sample. Roughly every 5 years, we renew the MS4 permits, so we'll update our templates and samples whenever that happens. As mentioned, you're not required to use them, but it's probably the easiest approach. If you do make your own SP3, that's completely fine. Just make sure you cover all the same topics with the same level of detail that we're asking for. All right, moving into public involvement and participation, including public notice. Public outreach is something that all municipalities and public complexes have been required to do from the beginning of the MS4 program. To comply with state and local public notice laws, you will need to announce certain permit-related actions to let your community know when important updates are happening, such as the adoption of stormwater ordinances or the municipal stormwater management plan. Public notices are typically announced in newspapers, social media, and websites. You may also choose to send a direct email to residents and businesses in your town or residents living on the public complex property. Dedicated stormwater webpage. Stormwater materials must be posted on a dedicated stormwater webpage on your municipal or public complex website, where the public can find all stormwater materials in one place. Having a dedicated stormwater webpage is something new for all permittees, though original Tier A towns were already required to post materials somewhere on their website. Some permittees may not have a website. If that's the case, they can reach out to their case manager and request approval to post their stormwater-related documents on a county, state, or federal agency website. We do have a free, easy-to-use template and have staff in-house to provide one-on-one assistance should you need it. Some of you already use our webpage template, so you will just need to update it with the required materials. A link to the example webpage is posted here on the slide and can also be found on our webpage. These are the things that need to be posted on your dedicated stormwater webpage. As you can see, Tier A permittees need to post their SP3, their Municipal Stormwater Management Plan, or MSWMP, stormwater ordinances, MS4 infrastructure map, and their Watershed Improvement Plan, or WIP, documents. Public complexes need to also post their SP3, regulatory mechanisms, MS4 infrastructure map, and WIP documents. Not all of these need to be uploaded right away if they have a delayed due date. So for example, the infrastructure maps don't need to be submitted or posted until 2026. Moving into local public education and outreach. As in previous years, the SPC will arrange for a variety of education and outreach to the public. For Tier A municipalities, we're still using a 12-point system where you can select activities from at least 3 of the 5 categories we describe in the permit attachment. One activity must educate on the hazards of illicit connections and improper disposal of waste. Keep records of your activities and report them in your annual report. If you need ideas or materials, we have some on the MS4 webpage that you can use. For example, we have template style flyers that you can copy, insert your own town name and contact information, and then you can mail it out with something you were already going to mail, like your tax bills. For public complexes, the public education requirement only applies if you have residents living on your property, such as colleges, universities, or military bases. You also need to earn at least 12 points. However, the point system was simplified in the 2024 permit renewal. So now there are only 3 categories to choose from, where you must choose at least one activity from each category to earn the required 12 points. Similar to the Tier A requirement, one activity must educate on the hazards of illicit connections and improper disposal of waste. Construction site stormwater runoff. The SPC must ensure that all entities whose construction projects will disturb 1 acre or more, or are part of a common plan of development that will disturb 1 acre or more, obtain a 5G3 or an individual industrial stormwater permit before starting construction. This is not a new condition to either permit, but please note that the 5G3 permit was renewed in 2022 with some minor changes. It applies to the projects undertaken by the permittee, as well as private companies and individuals. Post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment. This condition highlights the requirements related to stormwater management designs for major development projects. If you're the SPC but not the engineer, you won't need to know the technical details, but you do need to be familiar with the process. Engineers who review and approve major development projects must be different from those who design the projects. They can work at the same firm if that's something that you outsource, but the person who designs it can't be the person who reviews it. Review engineers must complete the department's Stormwater Management Design Review, or SWMDR course, every 5 years to stay certified. They also need to attend training on rule amendments if the department determines that training is warranted. DEP certification has always been required for original Tier A towns and public complexes, but it's a new requirement for new Tier A towns and new public complexes. We'll talk more about this when we get into the training section. You can check our webpage for the list of department certified engineers to confirm the status of your engineer for your facility. The reviewer must ensure that the projects are designed in accordance with the 7:8, the BMP manual, and constructed according to the approved plans. For Tier A permittees, the MSWMP, it's a high-level description of your municipality strategy and stormwater infrastructure that's used to reduce flood damage, minimize stormwater runoff and soil erosion from development, maintain groundwater recharge, maintain stream integrity, and minimize pollutants and stormwater runoff, all in a way that protects public safety. This is part of the town's master plan. The MSWMP has been a requirement of previous Tier A permit iterations and the old Tier B permit. But if you're not familiar with this, check out the MSWMP model that's posted on our webpage. The department will be updating our model at some point in 2025 to reflect the most recent stormwater rule amendments. Even when there are no changes to your MSWMP, the town needs to re-examine it at least every 10 years, along with the master plan, and send to the county for reapproval. The Stormwater Control Ordinance, or SCO, is your town's mechanism to enforce proper stormwater management designs for major development projects. This is also not a new requirement for original Tier A's and new Tier A's, as it was required in previous permit iterations as well. For starters, you should know what your town considers a major development project. Does it match the definition in the stormwater management rules, or is it more stringent? In July of 2023, we shared 2 versions of the department's revised model SCO and posted them on our website to reflect the most recent stormwater rule amendments. One includes language that simply cites the applicable subchapter and sections of the stormwater management rules instead of the full text. So when the rules change, you don't necessarily need to amend your SCO. The other is a longer, more detailed version that includes the full text. So if you do use that one, future amendments to your SCO will be more likely. Each amendment to your SCO must be submitted to the County Planning Board and the department and be posted on your dedicated stormwater webpage. Pinelands Town should follow the Pinelands Commission's SCO model in designated areas. This means for towns that fall partially within the Pinelands areas, you will be required to have 2 SCOs to reflect the different areas of the town. The permit requires updates to the MSWMP and SCO to reflect amendments to 7:8 within 1 year of rule adoption. Mitigation plans are an option for both Tier A permittees and public complex permittees. If your facility wants the ability to grant variances from the design and performance standards for your stormwater management measures, there needs to be a written mitigation plan that satisfies the criteria in the stormwater management rules and identifies the measures necessary to offset the deficit created by granting that variance. Each time your facility grants a variance, you need to send a report describing the variance to the department via NJDEP online within 30 days of the approval. For Tier A permittees, the mitigation plan must be included in your MSWMP and SCO, and you also must submit a copy of the report for each approved variance to your county planning board. For public complex permittees, the measures necessary to offset the variance can be provided through a menu of design and performance standards with corresponding mitigation projects for different drainage areas within the same HUC 14. Ordinances and regulatory mechanisms. So earlier we talked about the stormwater control ordinance for Tier A permittees, which is related to major developments. This set of ordinances and regulatory mechanisms is aimed at minimizing stormwater pollution and flooding throughout the community, not just at major development sites. The purpose of community-wide ordinances and regulatory mechanisms is to have methods in place to keep pollutants out of the stormwater so it doesn't make its way to streams, lakes, and other water bodies where it can contribute to harmful algal blooms, cause beach closings, and a host of other negative impacts. They help keep the community clean by setting a standard for the public and ensure you have a way to punish those who violate these ordinances and regulatory mechanisms. Let's briefly go through each community-wide ordinance and regulatory mechanism that permittees are required to adopt and explain their purpose. First, we'll talk about the ones that apply to both Tier A and public complex permittees. Pet waste. This is intended to require people to clean up after their pets so their waste stays out of the stormwater system and ultimately out of the watershed. For public complex permittees, this can also be used to prohibit pets other than service animals from being allowed on your property. Wildlife feeding. This is intended to keep people from feeding wildlife like ducks and geese to discourage them from gathering where they can leave droppings and pollute the watershed. Litter control. This is intended to keep trash, including solids, floatables, and residual pollutants from contaminating stormwater and causing flooding due to debris clogging the MS4. Towns can either adopt their own ordinance, which includes adopting our model if you'd like, or enforce the state litter statute to meet this requirement. Improper disposal of waste. This is intended to keep people from purposefully dumping waste into the storm system. This can include dumping grease, paint, motor oil, or other hazardous waste down the drain. Yard waste. This is intended to keep leaves and grass from polluting and clogging the stormwater system. For public complexes, this is only to be adopted if you have residents living on your property. We do have two different versions of a model for this. The first one is a containerized yard waste. You would adopt this one if your town or public complex provides pickup of leaves or grass and requires them to be placed in bags or another type of container. We also have loose yard waste, and you would adopt this one if your town or public complex provides pickup of leaves or grass and requires them to be left out in open piles. This also specifies that loose grass and leaves must be at least 10 feet from any storm drain and put out no sooner than 7 days prior to the scheduled pickup day. If you do not provide pickup of grass or leaves, adopt the loose yard waste ordinance, since it also applies to pickup by county or private providers. This also means that people should never intentionally blow leaves or grass into the street where they can wash into the storm system. For existing public complexes, these 5 regulatory mechanisms should already have been adopted. And for new public complexes, you must adopt them by January 1st, 2025. All model ordinances and regulatory mechanisms are posted on our MS4 webpage. The remaining topics are covered within the public complex permit under good housekeeping, which will be covered later in this presentation. So let's move on to talking about the rest of the ordinances that only apply to Tier A permittees. Private storm drain inlet retrofitting. This is intended to ensure that any new storm drains that are installed on private property follow the design standard in Permit Attachment B. The current inlet design keeps most solids and floatables out of the MS4. Retrofitting is also required for projects that involve repaving and resurfacing in direct contact with the old style storm drain inlets. Illicit connections. This is intended to ensure people don't contaminate stormwater by making a physical connection to the MS4. An example of this would be hooking a sanitary wastewater pipe from your home sewer or business into the storm drain system. Privately owned salt storage. This is one of the new ones that we introduced with the latest permit renewal. It's intended to ensure that salt piles are properly covered if they aren't in a permanent structure. Salt may be stored temporarily in a neat pile with full coverage to minimize runoff. And tree removal and replacement. This is the other new ordinance that came with the latest permit renewal. It's intended to ensure that trees are removed only when necessary and replaced in a responsible manner to reduce erosion and to promote stormwater infiltration. The ordinance does not have to match your model, but it must have some sort of removal and replacement requirement and be applicable to all properties across the entire municipality. As per the recent permit modification, new Tier A towns now have until May 1st, 2024 to adopt these ordinances. Original Tier A towns should have already adopted the first 7 ordinances during previous permit cycles, but have until May 1st, 2024 to adopt the privately owned salt storage ordinance and the tree removal and replacement ordinance. As mentioned, all model ordinances are posted on our MS4 webpage. The department is also offering a stormwater ordinance package, which includes all 9 ordinances listed on the slide here rolled into one, reflecting the department's models. This may be helpful for new Tier A towns since they can adopt this one package rather than adopting each ordinance individually. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like. If not, I'm just going to hand it over to Sherry Preisick, who will continue on with the permit conditions.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to hang on a second. Let me. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm not. Oh, my goodness. Sorry for. All right, last try. Sorry about that. I just wanted to come on and confirm that we were talking about in the chat the difference between the SP3 and the municipal stormwater management plan. So the municipal stormwater management plan is something that needs to be sent to the county if there's changes made with that 10-year review. The SP3 will be sent to the department for us to review it. If you're a new Tier A, that's going to be the deliverable to get your second payment. And if you're just a regular existing Tier A, that's one of your permit requirements. All right, hang on a second.
All right. Hello again. I'm Sherry Preissig. I'm going to do the next chunk. I'm the stormwater case manager for Burlington, Passaic, and Salem County, so some of you might recognize my name. I'm going to talk about the good housekeeping stuff and your infrastructure requirements. And then when I'm finished, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen. There's 4 of us all together, so you're a quarter of the way done. All right, so I think I'll turn my camera off so you can just listen. Okay. First of all, let's talk about the difference between storm drain inlets and catch basins. This little cartoon picture is very cute. The storm drain inlet is the top grate that you can walk over, like this guy. You can walk over it, you can drive over it, and if it's along a curb, it includes the curbside opening part. So we consider the inlet to be the parts that you could see on the surface. The catch basin is below the surface, either straight below the inlet or sometimes further down the pipe. All right, here's some real life photos of it. The picture on the left shows an inlet that needs cleaning, labeling, and retrofitting. All things are wrong with it. It's missing the bar along that curbside opening. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So that's what that looks like. And the one on the right, the inlet grate has been removed, allowing you to see the catch basin. Just be careful. You never know what you're going to find down there. Okay. We're going to be silly every once in a while. So this catch basin anyway has some trash and leaves in there that needs to be cleaned out. So that's what we're talking about. Storm drain inlets on the left, catch basins on the right. All right, so let's talk about the structure of it with the labeling. For storm drain inlets, there's a few things to keep in mind. First, they need to have appropriate labels to indicate that they drain to waterways. Newer inlets have this wording permanently cast into the structure, so you don't have to worry about it. Like the picture on the bottom there shows you. If you have an older model inlet, though, that doesn't have this type of thing, you can always attach a button on it, like the one above that says no dumping. Otherwise, you can paint a message with a stencil, or you can get creative and do something fancy like an artistic design to convey the same message. All permittee-owned storm drain inlets need to be retrofitted by the end of your permit cycle. So for Tier A's, that means by the end of 2027, and for public complexes, that means by the end of 2028. You do not need to replace these inlets. You don't have to rip them out and put new ones in, not at all. What you do need to do, if nothing else, is just to add a bolt-on plate across that curb opening if you have an old style structure, like the one in this top right picture over here. So if you're installing a new storm drain, though, like a brand new one, you are required to use the new style inlet that complies with the NJDOT design for bicycle safety. We have those requirements in our attachment B of the permit. Okay, if you're doing new storm drain inlets, also they need to have a corresponding catch basin designed for solids collections. It can be either directly below the inlet, or it can be a little downstream of the new storm drain inlet, just as long as it's prior to discharging to surface water. Storm drain inlets that are on bridges and culverts are exempt from this particular requirement, the catch basin part of the requirement. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about the structure. Let's go ahead and talk about the inspection, cleaning, and maintenance of them. Okay, so inspections for storm drain inlets, remember the top part you can see. These are super easy. You can just drive around and take a look and see what they look like. If there's a problem, you just hop out of the truck and clear off the trash or leaves or branches or whatever debris needs to be removed. Or if you see signs of damage while you're driving, you can just stop and see what needs to be done. So because it's so easy, we require that all permittees, Tier A and public complex, inspect all of their storm drain inlets once a year. Okay, catch basins, on the other hand, do involve a bit more work. The inspector would need to get out of the truck, look down inside with a flashlight or something, a stick, and possibly lift the inlet grate to see if the catch basin needs cleaning. For Tier A permittees, the requirement is to inspect at least 20% of your total every year on a rotation. So in the end of the permit cycle, the end of 5 years, all of your catch basins have been inspected. You can do it more often than that, but that's the minimum, 20% a year. Now, public complexes, you guys have considerably fewer catch basins, so we do require that you inspect all of your catch basins every single year. So when it comes to catch basin cleaning, we don't tell you what to do. Just check your manufacturer's recommendations. And if you want, you can also look at the EPA. They have guidance on their website that advises removal of materials when the sump pit becomes 40% full. Okay. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's go to outfalls, where all your stormwater comes out. So when you're doing outfall inspections, Tier A permittees, the requirement, again, because you have a lot of these, is to inspect at least 20% of your total every year on a rotation. So by the end of the permit cycle, you've hit all of them. Public complex permittees, again, you have way fewer, so we require that they're inspected every single year. Whenever you either identify or you newly construct an outfall, like sometimes when you're doing your mapping, you go, oh my goodness, we didn't realize this one was here. So whenever you identify a new one, it needs to be inspected within 30 days of this identification. The department does have outfall inspection forms on our webpage to document your findings. If you don't have your own, that's fine. These inspections need to include checking the overall structure, like the structural integrity of the outfall. You're looking for clogging and instances of stream scouring and illicit discharge. We'll talk about that a little bit more closely now in the next couple of slides. Okay, so this is a picture of scouring. It can present as gouging of the stream bank, undermining the outfall structure. It erodes soils, clogs stream beds, and really ruins habitats when this happens. So when you're performing your inspections, you're going to need to note if the soil is eroding away around the outfall and if stabilization is necessary. And just so it's super clear, we don't just mean outfalls that discharge to streams. We mean every outfall. I don't really love the name stream scouring. It should just be scouring, but so think of it as just scouring at your outfall. Anywhere, wherever it comes out. All reports of stream scouring need to be inspected within 30 days. And if you confirm that there is a case of scouring, it needs to be remediated within 12 months of discovery. The department has a form on our webpage to document these cases if you need it. So something to know, tier A's can use whatever form they want, but public complexes are required to use ours. That's why we have that little green picture there for public complexes. You need to use our forms if you have scouring and attach it to your annual report. All right, let's go over to illicit discharge. When you're here at your outfalls, again, looking for the same thing, it's structural integrity, scouring, and illicit discharge. You're making one stop for all these types of things that you're looking for. When you're inspecting for illicit discharges, look for instances of dry weather flow, which means flow coming out of the outfall 72 hours after a rain event. Other indicators of illicit discharge include foam, turbidity, colored or overly fragrant discharges, and the presence of sanitary waste items like that one. Okay, all reports of illicit discharges need to be inspected within 30 days, and confirmed cases need to be remediated within a year of discovery. So this is something both of you need to keep in mind. If you're a tier A or a public complex, all permittees that have an illicit discharge problem need to record it on the department's form and upload it with your annual report. Okay, one more about outfalls. Historically, there have been very few outfall problems reported to the department, yet we have tons of problems with stormwater flooding and pollution persisting. So we have kind of started working with the New Jersey Watershed Ambassador Program and other watershed groups using this new outfall observation form. It's something for concerned citizens to report potential cases of damaged outfalls, stream scouring, illicit discharge, whatever's going on out there. This citizen science approach is really a great resource to assist towns and facilities to identify potential stormwater outfall problems. And we do strongly encourage citizens to contact their municipality first to address these issues. But if it ends up that it comes to us, the department will review any of these reports. And our first step is to reach out to you guys. We're not going to just, come out there and go crazy with it. We're going to contact you to see if you know what's going on. And most of the time, you probably already know what's happening and you can give us an update. Okay, so that's it for outfalls. Let's move over to MS4 conveyance systems. A stormwater conveyance system includes any kind of man-made feature that conveys stormwater. This typically means pipes, ditches, swales, or some concrete drainage channels, that sort of thing. It's not a new permit condition for any of our MS4 permittees to manage these, but what's new is that you need to describe your inspection and maintenance program in your stormwater pollution prevention plan. And because you're putting it in there, you're going to be covering it in your annual training of staff who do the kind of work on the conveyance systems. We do not specify in the permit exactly when you should do inspections and maintenance, since there's so much variation in conveyance systems. So what we ask is you to just tailor your program to best suit your system. We do have guidance on our website if you need it, so feel free to check that out and reach out to your case manager if you need some other help. Okay. So far, we've talked about inspecting storm drain inlets, catch basins, outfalls, and conveyance systems, because those are really the most common components of stormwater infrastructure. But we know there's other features that our permittees use, so we've created this kind of catch-all condition. And it applies for anything else that you use in your town or your facility to manage stormwater, things like infiltration basins, any kind of stormwater basin, a manufactured treatment device, anything else that moves your stormwater or touches your stormwater or manages your stormwater that we haven't talked about already. This is what this is for. So any of your stuff that falls into this miscellaneous category, what you're going to do in your SPPP is explain what it is, define the conditions that warrant cleaning and maintenance per approved maintenance plans. And if you don't have a maintenance plan to refer to, you can create one yourself following the department's BMP manual or our maintenance guidance, which are both available on our website. So if you need to refer to that, go for it. And if the feature in question is something kind of unique and it's not included in our department BMP manual or guidance materials, and you don't have any kind of plan, what we are requiring is that you inspect these, whatever these features are, at least 4 times a year and after each rainfall over 1 inch. Okay. If any of your infrastructure is found not to be functioning properly, you need to take care of it no later than 90 days from discovery. And if you need help, some of these are old, some of these you might not be sure what they are, just reach out to your MS4 case manager, and we have our engineering group. We can put you in touch and point you in the right direction if you need some guidance there. All right. So this particular slide is just for the tier A's. It's talking about private stormwater facilities. So the condition is for privately owned stormwater facilities within your municipality. And as the SPC, your job is to make sure there's a way to make sure that these facilities are operational, that cleaning and maintenance is being performed per approved maintenance plans. And this is, again, one of those things that's nothing new. It was always required for Tier A and Tier B permits from the beginning, from 2004. So this is not new. We decided during this training to make it crystal clear how you should be doing this, though. Operation and maintenance responsibilities may be assigned to commercial property owners, to developers, and to homeowners associations. However, keep this in mind, individual homeowners cannot be assigned these responsibilities for stormwater facilities that were designed to manage stormwater for the general vicinity. You can't put that on a single homeowner. That is not okay. The private owner or operator, if it's one of those other groups I talked about, commercial, developer, HOA, they're responsible otherwise for providing documentation to the municipality that the stormwater facilities on their property are inspected annually and maintained according to the maintenance plans. And you can go about doing this however you want. You can implement a program however works best for your town. Some towns choose to have private owners submit forms to them every year to say conditions are met, while other municipalities will do these inspections themselves and charge a fee to the private owner. That way they're sure they're getting done and the private owner doesn't have to worry about it. As the SPC, you need to keep an inventory of the locations and types of these private stormwater facilities and any kind of records you get from the owner about inspections, cleaning, maintenance, repair work, anything that's going on, any problems or enforcement actions you've had to take, you're keeping records of those things. The location and types of private facilities will eventually need to be included in a map that you create for your watershed improvement plan. Christina is going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. All right, so that is all the infrastructure. We're going to move into good housekeeping now. So let's start with everyone's favorite, street sweeping. Okay, sweeping streets provides more than just aesthetic benefits. It keeps the dirt, debris, and litter, whatever else, out of the stormwater system where it would otherwise pollute the watershed. It helps alleviate flooding, since storm drains can get clogged from this stuff, and it helps reduce the frequency of catch basin cleanings, which can be kind of a pain and it's expensive. So the more you sweep, the less of that you'll have to do. You are only responsible for sweeping your roadways, and you do not need to buy a sweeper. You do not need to buy a sweeper. That was a big concern a lot of people had. You can check with the county, the state DOT, or a nearby town that you know has a sweeper and see if you can arrange a shared service with them. Something to keep in mind if you're a municipality or even a public complex, the county and the state have to sweep their own roads, some of which run through or around your municipality or your facility anyway. So it might be worthwhile to reach out to them and say, hey, while you're at it, could you hit our stuff too? Or you can also hire a private sweeping company if that's your only option. That is whatever you need to do is fine. As the SPC, you're responsible for making sure sweeping happens in accordance with your permit requirements. So we're going to talk about the different types of roads that need to be swept and the different permits that what the requirements are in each of the different permits. First of all, not all roads need to be swept, so please do not try to sweep tar and chip roads, dirt roads, or gravel roads. That will wreck your sweeper. So that on the left is a gravel road. On the right here, this is a road that has no storm drain inlets. So there's no way, there's also no drainage ditch or any kind of swale on the side there. There's no way for the stormwater to reach surface water. So if there's no way for the stormwater to run off and get into surface water, it does not have to be swept. We are strictly focused on keeping the stuff off the roads from going into the, from water into waterways eventually. Okay. So here's some that do need to be swept. This photo is one that needs to be swept because it has storm drain inlets that drain to creeks and things like that. If you have a really, really long road that only has storm drain inlets on one little stretch where it runs through a low area, maybe, you don't have to sweep the entire road. You can sweep just the area of the road that drains to those inlets. That's fine. Okay, here's a picture of a road. This is the road I live on, actually. It's a road that has no inlets at all, but there's a big old drainage ditch right there, and it connects to a creek. So if you have one of these, that's another type of road that needs to be swept. We know that there are some towns that will just put a ditch or a swale along a road that doesn't connect to anything at all. Then you don't have to sweep that. If it's there just to get the water off of the road so it doesn't flood or whatever, that's great. But if it connects to a creek, you need to sweep it. If it does not connect and it's just there to kind of let it go down into the water or go down into the dirt, that's fine. You don't have to sweep it. So let's talk about, we talked about what kind of roads get swept. Let's talk about what the schedule is. This first slide is for the Tier A's. Your sweeping requirements have changed from the previous permit to this permit that we renewed in 2023. So please pay attention if you haven't focused on it before. Roads with storm drain inlets need to be swept at least 3 times a year, so roughly every 4 months. And roads that don't have inlets, but they do discharge to surface water, like I showed you with those drainage swales, they need to be swept at least once a year. And remember, you're only sweeping your municipal roads that discharge in some way to surface water. So for new Tier A municipalities, the ones that were formerly Bs, street sweeping is a brand new condition. For the original Tier A towns, the criteria for sweeping has changed from the previous permit. So everyone has a little bit of time to set up and get plans in place. You have until January 1st of 2026 to put your sweeping program into practice. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the street sweeping for public complexes now. The requirements have not changed from the previous permit, so this is pretty easy for you. Every single month, you're going to sweep paved areas that have storm drain inlets that drain to surface water. This is going to be parking lots like this, any kind of parking lots with inlets, or if you have like a parking garage. This is a little roadway that has an inlet on it. So the one on the left is a hospital. I think the one on the right, I don't remember what that is. For most public complexes, there's very little sweeping to do, sometimes no sweeping to do because it just depends on your setting. Some larger facilities might be in an industrial complex or more of a community setting like a college campus, for example. If you have streets on your property that do not belong to the municipality, the county, or the state, you're going to be looking for this. Do you have inlets? Yes or no? If you do, you're sweeping that area every month. Okay, so I hope that's straightforward. All right, another good housekeeping here. Let's talk about herbicide management. If you use herbicides to kill weeds, I know not everyone does, but if you do, the stormwater program coordinator, that's you here in the training, need to ensure that they're being applied properly. You want to prevent it from getting washed into the waterways or causing erosion from devegetation. Your staff is going to need to know to avoid spraying herbicides on or near storm drain inlets or on steep slopes, and only spray in areas where it's unsafe or impossible to mow. When you're spraying around structures like a telephone pole, keep it in a tight little circle of 2-foot radius. That's the requirement for that. Right. Excess de-icing material management. I wish we had rephrased this in the permit to be a little more clear because we've had some confusion. The management of excess de-icing material is not related to how you store your salt supply at the maintenance yard. We are going to talk about that a little bit later. This particular condition, though, is aimed at cleaning up those little piles that are sometimes accidentally left behind in parking lots or along roadways where the driver starts and stops the spreader. And some of you have nice equipment and it doesn't do this, but I guess the old style, there's sometimes these little piles. This is from a real little accidental pile that happened. So what the requirement is within a couple days after the storm, you have 72 hours, whenever it's safe, check where your spreaders have worked and clean up any little piles you find. This way it doesn't get washed into the nearby waterways. Okay, I hope that clears that one up. All right, let's talk about roadside vegetative waste management. And here we're talking about tree trimmings, grass clippings, and leaves. So any grass, leaves, or tree branches that get into the MS4 have the potential to clog the conveyance system and cause flooding. These materials also increase the levels of nutrients and total suspended solids in receiving waters, which can eventually end up as harmful algal blooms, and it'll interfere with the aquatic habitat for sure. We are aware that some residents blow grass and leaves into their storm drains or storm swales to make it sort of disappear as they're trying to clean up their properties. So earlier we had discussed, or Hannah discussed, how municipalities would adopt a yard waste ordinance to kind of combat that, to have a mechanism to tell people you can't do that. So for public complexes with residents on their properties, you can also enforce your yard waste regulatory mechanisms to have an avenue to stop this behavior. This particular permit condition, though, is not for the residents. This is for you guys. This is for your staff. This is a requirement to make sure your staff are not doing the same exact thing. They too have to handle these types of vegetative waste in a way that keeps it from entering the stormwater system. So for example, you may want to not bag your grass clippings, just leave them right where they fall. And if you do clean up the vegetative waste, maybe you're trimming trees along your roadway, just in your SPPP, you're going to explain how you keep it out of the stormwater system. Maybe you'll say you pick it up and take it to a facility, like a recycling facility or something like that. But what we want to hear from you is that you're not letting it wash into the storm drain. Okay. Roadside erosion control. So roadside erosion can cause a bunch of problems. Sedimentation of receiving waters if it's just a little bit. And it can also pose a real public safety concern. So for this reason, erosion inspections are required along roadways that you own or operate. We have received complaints about ongoing erosion in lots and lots of towns. In fact, this picture on the slide is not a stock photo. It's from one of our enforcement officers who was out investigating an erosion complaint, and she took this picture for us. So this is why it's in the permit. You must have a roadside erosion program in place, even if you have curbed roads. Somebody, one of our towns told us, so we don't need to do that because we have curbs, but erosion can still happen on a curbed road. So whether or not your roads are curbed, please have an erosion control program in place. It's really an easy one to accomplish. You can do this while you're out doing other stormwater inspections. So maybe while you're driving around and checking your storm drain inlets, also be kind of peeking over and see if there's any erosion happening, kill two birds with one stone there. If you do see some problems, the department allows 3 months to address it. And if you need more time, give us a call and let us know, what's going on, and we'll authorize some extra time. Okay. And this one is just for public complexes because Hannah already talked about illicit connections for Tier A's in the form of an ordinance. So this is not an ordinance. This is really just a permit requirement, a good housekeeping kind of requirement for public complexes. It simply means that nobody can discharge into your storm drain. So no one should hook a sanitary wastewater pipe from a home sewer or a business sewer into your storm drain system on your property. And the way you might find these illicit connections is if you're checking your outfalls and you find some sort of problem there at the outfall, you're going to trace it back and you may or may not find that there's an illicit connection happening. So, okay. And my last slide here is, again, for public complexes. This is for tree replacement management. So Tier A's, you have an ordinance that covers this. Public complexes, you don't have an ordinance. This is just a good housekeeping practice that you need to keep in mind. So let's first talk about exemptions because there are lots of exemptions. So don't be afraid, don't worry about this particular requirement. If there's a tree that's a hazard, any kind of hazard, I'll talk about what that means, you can remove it. It's absolutely fine. It does not count. any kind of hazard tree, it would include trees that are diseased, trees that are infested by insects, trees that are dead, or trees that are dying. Go ahead and please get rid of those. They don't count. We don't want them. It's fine. Also, you can go ahead and remove trees that obstruct traffic signs, pedestrian walkways, or obstruct the safe passage of vehicles. And if you have a concern about the condition of a tree, you can have an arborist come out and check it out. And if the arborist declares that it's a threat, remove those too. They don't count. We want you to take care of those. The only time this permit condition does come into play is when you're removing a perfectly healthy tree from your public complex property. So these details that I have on the slide are included in the permit. So, you don't have to try to get your microscope out and see this little print, but basically, depending on the size of the healthy tree that you're removing, you're going to replace it with one or more trees. It's a little more strict for the street trees, which are the trees that are planted along a sidewalk or in a median or along a public roadway. So that's what you need to know. And remove trees, you can't wait 27 years to do it. You have to remove them within 1 year or replace them within 1 year. You're removing the healthy tree. Okay. That is it for me. We're going to take another pause and let's do 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. So at 10:01, we're going to come back, but meanwhile, we'll be answering questions in the chat. Thank you, guys.
All right, everyone, it's 10:02, so let's get back into the presentation. We have some other staff members addressing questions in the chat as I continue on. So thanks to Hannah and Sherry for the handoff. My name is Kristen Hines, and I'm the MS4 case manager for Monmouth County and Somerset County, so some of you may recognize my name. So I'm going to continue on with the presentation, and I'll talk about the requirements for BMPs at the maintenance yards, and then move into training requirements and do an overview of our mapping assistance as well. And then I'll hand it off to our last presenter to finish up. So I'm just going to turn my camera off and we'll continue on with the presentation. Okay, so as the SPC, you are responsible for making sure that operations are being conducted in compliance with your MS4 permit at all maintenance yards and ancillary operations, and that all good housekeeping BMPs are being followed. This applies to all permittee owned or operated yards for outdoor storage and maintenance of vehicles, equipment, materials, and supplies. Ancillary operations include places like fleet or maintenance shops, impound yards, permanent and mobile fueling locations, salt and sand storage locations, snow disposal areas, etc. For those permittees who have residents, this can also include sites where you allow residents to drop off trash, recycling, yard waste, used oil, etc. There are specific BMPs that must be implemented at each maintenance yard and ancillary operation, so let's go through them now. First up is site inspections. Usually the DPW or maintenance supervisor will designate someone to inspect each yard, or they will do this themselves. The inspector will note the conditions and document any work that is done or needs to be done to fix problems. Inventory list. Keep a list of all materials and machinery that are exposed to stormwater since they are a potential source of pollutants. Container labels. Be sure to label all containers so that they are clean and easy to read. Spill kits. Keep a spill kit near any liquid transfer areas and make sure it's protected from the elements. Be sure to use dry method only, for example, kitty litter or sawdust, and sweep it up for proper disposal afterwards. Bulk liquids. Some of you may have above ground fuel tanks of fuel, used motor oil, or liquid deicers. So be sure to surround these tanks with a secondary containment barrier, such as a spill containment dike, to contain any drips and spillage that happen during operations. And this is preferable over just a double-walled tank to capture spills. Next up is fueling and other bulk liquid transfers. During operations, be sure to use drip pans below hose and pipe connections and block any nearby storm drain inlets. Don't delay repairs or replacement of broken fueling equipment. Post signs prominently in the fueling station to include the specific language that's outlined in the permit. And we also have a sign template posted on our MS4 webpage that you can copy if you'd like. Discharge from secondary containment. When you empty the stormwater from the collection area surrounding the tank, be sure to dispose of it properly. If you've determined that it's clean, you can just open the valve and let the stormwater flow out. However, if it appears to be contaminated, or if you're not sure, then please haul it off-site for proper disposal. If the contents inside the tank are clear, you may not be able to determine if any of the material got mixed with stormwater. So in this case, assume that it's contaminated and haul it off-site for disposal. Vehicle and equipment maintenance and repair. Perform these activities indoors whenever possible, but if you must work outdoors, then please use portable tents and drip pans and work in areas far away from storm drains if you can, or if there are any nearby storm drains, then please block them. Wash wastewater containment. Wastewater tanks need to be certified each year by a New Jersey licensed engineer. Above ground tanks and pipes must be checked for leaks every 3 years, and the visible portions should be checked before every use. Check the capacity and pump out prior to reaching 95% storage capacity in the tank, and stop use immediately if repairs are needed. Report spills immediately to the NJDEP hotline and properly dispose of pump out water. Salt and other granular de-icing materials. These materials must be stored in a permanent structure and in a way that minimizes exposure to rain, snow, and stormwater runoff. If you don't have a door on the structure, that's okay. Just be sure to keep the materials from overflowing beyond the protection of the storage structure. Sweep up any tracked or spilled materials after any loading and unloading events. Aggregate material, wood chips, and finished leaf compost. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm drain inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use 3-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, hay bales, sandbags, and/or grading to minimize stormwater runoff and runoff. Storing these materials is fine, and finished materials may be stored on-site forever. However, if you process compost or do any chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing of wood waste or yard trimmings, then you'll need an industrial stormwater permit for these activities. Cold patch asphalt. This material must be stored indoors or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material and contained to prevent materials from contaminating stormwater. Street sweepings and storm sewer cleanouts. Keep these materials in a leak-proof container or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material and contained to prevent materials from contaminating the stormwater. Materials may not be stored for longer than 6 months, or the town or the public complex would need to apply for a solid waste permit. Construction and demolition waste, wood waste, and yard trimmings. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm drain inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use 3-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, hay bales, sandbags, and/or grading to minimize stormwater run-on and runoff. Again, if you're doing any processing of compost, such as chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing, then you'll need an industrial stormwater permit for this activity. Scrap tires. Tires must be stored in a covered container or enclosure to prevent exposure to stormwater. Inoperable vehicles or equipment. Use tents, covers, and drip pans under leaking vehicles and check them during monthly site inspections. And finally, refuse containers and dumpsters. All trash containers and dumpsters on site must be covered when they're not in use. So as I mentioned on a previous slide, the storage of wood waste, leaves, and compost is still covered under the MS4 permits. However, all composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing activities, even if it's just one time per year, are no longer covered under the MS4 permits and will now require a separate industrial stormwater permit called the Wood Waste Recycling and Leaf Composting General Permit. So if you're performing any of these activities on any of your sites, please reach out to your MS4 County case manager to determine if you're eligible for coverage under the WRC permit, or if you'll require an individual industrial stormwater permit. And you can also visit the link on the slide here for more information about that permit as well. Okay, so let's move into training requirements. So as the SPC, you are responsible for making sure that everyone is getting the right training at the right time. You are also responsible for making sure that training records are kept to demonstrate compliance with the training requirements of your permit. So let's go through each type of training requirement that's listed here on the slide. So first up is Stormwater Program Coordinator training. Yes, this is the training that we're doing right now. We developed this training to make sure that the permit is interpreted and implemented correctly and consistently throughout the state. All SPCs are required to attend this training once every permit cycle, so about every 5 years. You are welcome to attend more frequently than this if you'd like a refresher, and you can also invite other staff who work on your stormwater program who want to attend as well. During training sessions, we're monitoring attendance to make sure that all SPCs for every town and public complex and eventually highway agency have been trained. If you change jobs or retire, then someone at your facility would need to let us know who's going to replace you within 30 days. And your replacement must attend the next available live session. Again, we're planning to hold them at least twice per year. And we suggest that new SPCs watch the recorded training session that's posted on our MS4 website to hold them over until the next live session. Next up is annual employee training. For annual employee training, the SPC is responsible for conducting or coordinating annual training for their staff, which includes contractors on stormwater-related job duties. The required training topics are listed here on the slide for both Tier A's on the left in the blue and on the right for public complexes in the green. New staff must receive training within 3 months of commencement of duties and then annually after that. Not everyone needs to be trained on every single topic. Just make sure that the people who are doing the work related to the topic are getting the appropriate training. The only topic that would apply to everyone would be a review of the facility's most current SP3. We know that you don't have a training department, so discussions of the topics listed here should be conducted each year and led by the most knowledgeable person that you have on that topic. So for example, street sweeping might be conducted by the DPW director. If you have a code enforcement officer, that person might be the one to best cover the ordinance or regulatory mechanism training. This can be done in a group setting or one-on-one, out in the field, in the office, or virtually on the computer, however you see fit. The SPC is ultimately responsible for ensuring that all training, required training is held and that all appropriate records are kept in accordance with your permit. Moving on to stormwater management design reviewer training. The SPC must ensure that those engineers who review and approve designs for major development projects on behalf of the permittee attend the department's stormwater management design reviewer training, which we call SWMDR. The purpose of this training is to ensure that projects are designed in accordance with the rules so that once a project has been constructed, there is minimal impact on stormwater quality and runoff quantity or flooding. This is a technical course that covers the most current stormwater management rules, municipal stormwater management plans, SCOs, mitigation plans, as well as the department's B&P manual. The course is approximately 12 hours in length, broken up over 4 half-day sessions, and it's required to attend every 5 years. The department has a list of past course attendees posted on our website, as well as their certification dates, so you can check the status of your engineer via the link on the slide. If there's an amendment to the stormwater management rules, then additional training may be required. If the department determines that training sessions are necessary for the amendments, then engineers must attend within 12 months of the adoption of any rule amendment. Rule amendment training sessions will be announced by the department on our website and via email to all SPCs and to engineers who have attended our previous SWMDR courses. If you've attended SWMDR and your email address changes, please let us know. Next up is municipal board and governing body member training, and this only applies to Tier A municipalities. Members of planning boards, zoning boards, and town councils who review applications for major development projects are required to be trained on an overview of the stormwater management rules. The department provides a set of brief videos that give a high-level description of the key considerations one should make when reviewing a project. The content and time commitment is nowhere near as extensive as the SWMDR course. The video that these members would watch when they first take office is about 45 minutes long. And then once per term after that, they can choose to watch one of the videos in the link here. And those videos range from 4 to 12 minutes in length. We hope to refresh these videos for now. We hope to refresh these videos in the future, but for now, if you have people that are in office for lengthy terms, then please have them rewatch one of those videos that are posted, even if they've seen them before. Okay, so let's shift gears from training to mapping. So talking about the MS4 infrastructure map. So I'm first going to talk about the requirements for Tier A's. Original Tier A permittees should have already mapped and submitted their stormwater outfall pipes in December of 2020. Mapping is an entirely new condition for any new Tier A towns. With the 2023 permit renewal, all municipalities will now need to map all municipally owned or operated stormwater infrastructure. This means mapping everything that collects, treats, or conveys stormwater, including outfalls, groundwater discharge points, interconnections, storm drain inlets, manholes, stormwater conveyance systems, pump stations, and any other types of stormwater facilities that the municipality owns or operates. This will also include mapping the property boundaries of any maintenance yards and ancillary operations. Let's talk about public complexes now. So public complexes should have already submitted a stormwater facilities map to the department as of January 1st, 2020, which was required by the 2019 permit. So this applies to existing public complexes. The map included all permittee-owned or operated stormwater facilities, such as catch basins, detention basins, retention basins, filter strips, riparian buffers, infiltration trenches, sand filters, constructed wetlands, wet basins, bioretention systems, low-flow bypasses, and stormwater conveyances. Stormwater facilities also include structural stormwater management measures. Existing public complexes should have also completed a stormwater facilities inventory, which would have included any of the following: storm drain inlets, stormwater management basins, subsurface infiltration and detention systems, culverts, manufactured treatment devices, and green infrastructure. All of these are also considered stormwater facilities and would therefore have been required to be mapped in the stormwater facilities map. Since all existing public complex permittees completed these two requirements as of January 1st, 2020, the MS4 infrastructure map for this permit should not be a huge lift for those existing permittees. The only new requirement for existing permittees, public complexes that is, would be to map the property boundary of their public complex as well as the property boundary of any maintenance yards and ancillary operations. All permittees must submit the MS4 infrastructure map electronically to the department by January 1st of 2026. Electronically does not mean a PDF that's sent via email. It means submitting a georeferenced shapefile, geodatabase, AutoCAD file, or an Excel spreadsheet with georeferenced location information. The department has a free mapping tool and can also provide ArcGIS online licenses for free to any interested permittee. If the DEP mapping tool is used, then data submittal is automatic. If the department's tool is not used, then you would be required to upload your files via NJDEP Online. The infrastructure map must be reviewed annually or more frequently as necessary and updated to include the location or attributes of any new or newly identified MS4 infrastructure. The map must also be posted on a dedicated stormwater webpage when it's complete. A map in PDF format will suffice for the posting requirement, but we've also seen some permittees include a link to an interactive stormwater map on their website as well. Okay, so now that we've gone through the mapping permit requirements for both municipalities and public complexes, let's get into an overview of how the department is providing free mapping assistance to permittees and all the available options that we have for completing your mapping requirements. It's important to note that whoever completes the MS4 infrastructure map should be aware of all the available options the department offers. Each method we're about to show you will satisfy the electronic submission requirement of your permit. The department previously created a geodatabase template and associated data dictionary for 7 stormwater feature classes, which included the required outfall pipes for municipalities and the additional required stormwater facilities for public complexes from the previous permits. We're working to modify and update the template to account for all of the new infrastructure, the stormwater features required to be mapped by both permit renewals. The department realizes that not every permittee operates in the same manner or has the same technological capabilities, so the geodatabase template was originally made available over several different collection methodologies in order to suit the needs of all of our permittees. So this included a template for ArcGIS Online that can be downloaded for desktop computers, smartphones, or tablets. If permittees are familiar with or currently using either ArcMap or ArcPro, you can also download the geodatabase template that's on Esri through your own account. And finally, there's also a template provided in Excel format on our website. So in the previous Tier A permit, municipalities were only required to map outfall pipes. The other feature classes that you see depicted here on the slide were created within the template to assist public complexes with their stormwater facilities inventory and map. And those feature classes remained optional for municipalities to use at the time if they wanted to map those features. So once the updates to the tool are completed to account for the new mapping requirements in both permit renewals, the tool will capture MS4 outfalls, MS4 conveyance, storm drain inlets, MS4 groundwater discharge points, MS4 interconnections, MS4 manholes, culverts, stormwater facilities, MS4 pump stations, and finally the property boundaries of maintenance yards and other ancillary operations. So if you've already mapped and submitted some of your data electronically using the old feature classes, then we'll be able to migrate this data over to match the new updated feature classes. This way, none of your previous work or the data that you collected would be lost in the translation. So the first method created was using a shared editing map through ArcGIS Online. This program allows users to collect points and associated information on a tablet, smartphone, or computer. The department secured a pool of free-to-use licenses for our permittees, and they are available upon request. Data that's collected will be stored in our database, can be viewed publicly and downloaded at any time. The desktop version of ArcGIS Online is a great way to electronically digitize points from the comfort of your office using an old PDF or tax map. The second option available to permittees is a mobile application. The app is called ArcGIS Field Maps, and it allows users to collect points through ArcGIS Online. And the app can be accessed through both the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Some of you may be familiar with the previous version of the app that was called Collector, but Esri has since transitioned to using this new Field Maps app. The app itself is free to download and use, and once a license is obtained from the department, you would have access to our shared editing map for MS4 infrastructure, and you can begin mapping. This is one of the best methods to be able to collect new data points out in the field. Once the app is downloaded, the user can collect points by using the mobile device's GPS or by manually placing points using an aerial background. When a point is placed, a list of descriptive attributes will show up and can be filled out. This helps in determining things such as the type of basin or MTD, as well as the ownership of the facility, which is important when conducting maintenance. Most fields within the tool have drop-down menus that make it easy to fill out and less time-consuming than having to type out each attribute in the field. So for users who are already familiar with ArcMap or ArcPro, we also developed a geodatabase that can be downloaded from our website. The geodatabase can be populated on the computer and then submitted back to the department to meet the mapping requirements. Again, everything here within the geodatabase template has drop-down menus, so it's a lot more user-friendly. While the two previous options I showed you provided automatic electronic submission, if you use the geodatabase template, you will need to upload your files via NJDEP Online in order to satisfy the electronic submission requirement in your permit. The final method that's available for download from our website is a Microsoft Excel template. The template is populated with the same fields and drop-down menus as the other templates. However, if you use the Excel spreadsheet, then you would also need to include point coordinates, so latitude and longitude. You'd have to manually enter those into the spreadsheet before you submit it. If you use the Excel template, you will also need to upload your file via NJDEP Online in order to satisfy the electronic submission requirement in the permit. As the department receives permittees' stormwater infrastructure data, it becomes available to all permittees and the public in a public-facing layer that's managed by our Bureau of GIS via NJDEP Open Data and NJGeoWeb. Stormwater infrastructure data points that have been submitted to the department are given a preliminary review for quality control and then posted to NJDEP Open Data for viewing and download. If you're unfamiliar with the site, a simple browser search for NJDEP Open Data will take you right to it, and there's also a link posted on the slide here for your convenience. From there, you can search for and download all publicly available department data. As we continue to receive new submissions of data and review it, we will continuously post data to the site. If for some reason you're viewing your data on Open Data and you notice any errors in the data, then please reach out to your case manager and we can work together to get the errors corrected. NJDEP Open Data is the best way for users to download data that was previously submitted to the department. NJGeoWeb shows the same submitted data as NJ Open Data, but in a more user-friendly and interactive way. NJGeoWeb is the best way to view MS4 data along other publicly facing data layers that the department has to offer, such as a streams layer and a TMDL layer. If you're unfamiliar with the site, a simple browser search for NJGeoWeb will take you right to it, and there's also a link again here on the slide for you. This is what the application looks like after you click the button to launch it, and then you're also able to close this About window on the side to give you some more space to move around the map. You can find tons of different data sets here, such as TMDLs, impairments, streams and surface water bodies, stream classifications, impervious surface data, etc. The list goes on. So in summary, NJDEP initially created a database and data dictionary for the stormwater infrastructure features required to be mapped by MS4 permittees. It's currently being updated to account for the new mapping requirements in both the 2023 Tier A permit and the 2024 Public Complex permit. The data dictionary was made available over several different collection methodologies in order to meet the needs of all of our permittees. Existing data can be accessed via NJDEP Open Data, as well as NJ GeoWeb, and you can view it and download it. The department is willing to provide assistance in the form of in-person training and by answering any questions you may have. So if you need any assistance or have questions along the way, then please feel free to reach out to us. Lastly, for Tier A towns, if funding is still an obstacle for you to complete your mapping, even after you've explored all the assistance that we have available, there is an external special emergency appropriations state statute, which acts as a mechanism for towns to acquire funds to complete the deliverables that are described in the code. Towns would adopt an ordinance that authorizes special emergency appropriations that can be used for revisions or codifications of ordinances, preparation of master plans, or the preparation of an MS4 map. So we've seen some municipalities take advantage of this recently in order to complete their mapping requirements. So for more information on that, then please visit the link on the slide. All right, so that takes me to the end of my portion of the presentation. So we're going to take another short little break here, about 5 minutes, and staff will continue to answer questions in the chat. Additionally, if anybody wants to answer or ask any questions out loud, you can use the raise your hand feature and we'd be happy to have you unmute and discuss the question out loud. So thanks.
right, everybody, we're going to get started on the next portion of the slides. My name is Christina Carrivo, in case I haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet. All right. So next we'll go through the details of the watershed improvement plan requirements for both the Tier A and the public complex permittees. As many of us are already aware, there are many water quality impairments and resulting TMDLs that affect waters in every town across the state. Some of these impairments affect fish and aquatic biota, drinking water intakes that supply the water we drink, as well as rivers and coastal waters where many of us swim. Every summer, more and more lakes are found to have harmful algal blooms, also known as HABs, because of poor water quality. Some of these waters have no other discharges to them other than stormwater runoff. So the department is requiring that stormwater permittees develop or take part in a regional development of a watershed improvement plan, also known as a WIP, to identify water quality and quantity problems affecting their waters and to determine what improvements can be made to reduce their contribution. We do recognize that some sources of pollution and flooding are beyond a permittee's jurisdiction, some things such as farmland or county, state, or federal properties. But with this exercise, we'll hopefully identify those sources. Here you can see a map depicting the TMDLs and impairments in waters across New Jersey. Areas with water quality impairments for which TMDLs have been developed are represented in yellow. Areas with water quality impairments but no TMDLs have been developed yet are represented in blue. And since both these layers are transparent, the green portions of the map represent areas where both a TMDL and an impairment are present. You can see that at least a portion of every town in the state has an impairment, a TMDL, or more often than not, both. So here we have an overview of the watershed improvement plan requirements. Each of these phases will be submitted through the Stormwater Document Submittal Service via NJDEP Online. The department recognizes that the development of the WIP is going to be a significant undertaking, so we'll be available for guidance throughout the process. All right, let's get into it. The development of the plan is divided up into 3 phases. The first will be due by January 1st, 2026 for all permittees. The goal of that first phase is to inventory all stormwater related information, which will then be used to inform what is likely contributing to the water quality and quantity problems, and where improvements could be implemented, which would then lead us into phase 2. So phase 2 is going to be due by January 1st, 2027, a year after the first phase is due. And the goal of the next phase is to evaluate the information that was gathered in phase 1, and then you're going to determine what potential improvement projects can be implemented to address both quality and quantity concerns. And then by the end of that year, December 1st, 2027, you will submit the final phase of the WIP, which is going to select which of the potential quality and quantity improvement projects from phase 2 that you will implement, and you'll determine on what schedule you'll go through with them. Phase 1 will likely involve multiple staff members, as it is closely related to the MS4 infrastructure map that is required to be submitted on the same date. This report will involve combining the required MS4 infrastructure map information that we discussed earlier with additional mapping information that is available from the department, plus other information that the permittee must provide. The additional mapping information available through the department that is required for both Tier A and public complexes will include the water body classification layers for the receiving water bodies. This could be anything such as FW2 non-trout, pineland streams, Category 1. The next thing would be the TMDL and impairments layer, and this would be by subwatersheds or HUC 14s. And that would show which pollutants are affecting that watershed. The impervious area layer. And then if you're a Tier A, you'll also need to include the overburdened communities or environmental justice area layer. And then optionally, permittees are encouraged to add the layer showing where all NJDEP's regulated facilities are in each watershed. All of these layers combined will begin to illustrate the connection between the water quality and quantity issues present upstream in your watersheds and may highlight potential sites where improvement projects may be implemented. The permittee will also need to collect additional data that is not required by the MS4 infrastructure map and is not available from the department currently. This will include the drainage areas for each outfall or groups of outfalls, the drainage areas for each interconnection, and if you're a TRA, you will also need to add the location of any private stormwater facilities within your subwatersheds. Here on the slide, we have the H&H database. It is a good resource to use as a starting point to identify private stormwater facilities. A little background on that, it was developed by the Soil Conservation Districts, originally with NJDEP funding around 2011. It's available on Rutgers' website, and then you can do a Google search, or you can see the link on the slide here. Please understand that this database is not all-inclusive, and it may not have been updated with new projects or as-built plans if they differed from the applications. And then last, I want to mention that our Bureau is working to develop an online web map that will aggregate all of the publicly available stormwater layers that you can see here. Through this tool, users will be able to create the required maps more efficiently and hopefully cost effectively, as opposed to each permittee researching and combining all of this information separately. So for regional collaboration, let's just talk about that before we get into the next phases. You may decide now or after the phase 1 mapping and inventory has been completed that you want to combine your improvement efforts with any of the following. That would be things such as other towns, other MS4 permittees, other types of NJDEP permittees, and even third parties such as a watershed group. Public complex facilities are required to collaborate with municipalities during the WIP development process. These efforts should be targeted at municipalities that share subwatersheds with the public complex to reduce the pollutants for all receiving waters within and bordering the property. This collaboration is completely supported by the department. However, to ensure that no one else speaks for your municipality or your public complex, any regional WIP collaboration would need to be endorsed in writing by each permittee and specifically state which part of the town in HUC 14 terms the regional WIP will apply to. It will also need to describe what specific projects and responsibilities will be undertaken by each entity. The regional WIPs will need that extra level of detail to make sure there is no misunderstanding between entities and the department is not misunderstanding anything either. All right, jumping into phase 2, the watershed assessment report. This report will be created by using the map from phase 1 to identify potential water quality and quantity improvement projects targeting TMDLs and impairments in each subwatershed. The report will also need to include an estimate of the reduction of pollutants, a summary of feedback from the public sessions, an estimate of funding needs, and a tentative implementation schedule. Projects may involve disconnecting and redirecting stormwater runoff to keep it from being discharged directly into impaired waterways. Remember that if you disconnect runoff from the whole area that flows to an outfall, that will yield 100% reduction for all parameters in the impaired water body. For some other parameters, such as total suspended solids, phosphorus, and nitrogen, there are best management practices that we have published removal rates for in the Stormwater BMP manual. And then we also suggest looking online to see what other information has been published. And you may reference case studies to propose removal rates for parameters within your subwatersheds. And then finally, the department is also requiring that permittees solicit input from residents, businesses, neighboring towns that share subwatersheds, other permitted dischargers, and anyone else who needs to be informed. Hosting these stakeholder sessions is an important and required step since these projects may involve tax dollars, disruptions of roads, or use of public property, and many of the interested groups may have observational stormwater information. And then very last thing about this report is the permittee shall post the watershed assessment report on its dedicated stormwater webpage at the due date and announce a 60-day public comment period. All right, so phase 3, the watershed improvement plan report, the final phase. This will take the information presented in phase 2's report, which was public noticed, and then you will evaluate those public comments, the cost, the funding that is needed, etc. It will also identify which projects are to be implemented, including proposed timelines and expected results. This report will need to include a summary of project locations and and expected load reductions. It will also include the rationale behind the chosen projects and plans to incorporate other regulatory requirements, implementation schedule, and costs. So this plan will need to be updated, will need to be reviewed and updated when necessary, based on the biennial review to the impairments of the permittee's water bodies. And that's going to be based on the department's integrated report and any newly adopted TMDLs, as well as the updates to any of the overburden communities layer, and then any other updates. And then finally, I want to mention that we're preparing a WIP template, including guidance material for permittees to use. This way, all WIPs are developed statewide following the same format to make it easier for the public and the department to review and compare. We'll share these materials as soon as they are finalized. All right, so I just want to see if there's anything going on in the chat or if everybody's handling the questions. Seems like okay, seems like everybody's okay to answer them in the chat, so I'll carry on with the rest of the presentation. All right, so moving back into the permit conditions, the last final permit conditions here are going to be additional and optional measures. So the department will notify you if there are any additional permit requirements that your facility needs to adopt. This does not happen often. Such cases would result in minor modifications to this master general permit and will require the permittee to meet either numeric effluent limitations or implement new or enhanced best management practices. And then for optional measures, you are allowed to adopt and enforce other measures to your facility's stormwater program that exceed the requirements in this permit. For example, you may have an ordinance requiring all dumpsters on private properties to be covered, or you may have a problem that isn't unique to your area that relates to stormwater that you want to address. All of these are acceptable. For record keeping, very important task. When the department or EPA staff come out for an audit or a site inspection, we'll be looking at your records to demonstrate compliance with each permit condition. So one of your main jobs as the SPC is to have these records ready upon request. Be sure to keep copies of logs that record inspections, any repairs, any investigations, any training, all of these related to the permit compliance for at least 5 years. And then the annual report and certification, as many of you may already be aware, every year between January 1st and May 1st, all permittees will report on the previous calendar year by accessing NJDEP online to submit their annual report. Tier A municipalities are also required to complete and attach the supplemental questionnaire. If you discovered any cases of illicit connections within that reporting year, you're also required to submit those illicit connection inspection reports as attachments to the annual report. Public complexes must attach an outfall inspection, stream scouring, and illicit connection form to their annual report each year. And then if you're new to submitting an annual report and would like to see any previous year's submission, feel free to contact your MS4 County case manager and they'll provide whatever reports that you request. And then some NJDEP online tips. So many of you may already be familiar with NJDEP online, as this is the platform where you access your annual report each year. Some helpful tips that we've put together for NJDEP online are to create your own account. You cannot finish a report that another user started. Contact your case manager if you're unable to complete the annual report. Reports may be in progress in another user's account. Very important to write down your username, your password, and certification PIN. Accounts are managed by NJOIT, so not us. If you forget your username or your password, you will have to use the on-screen help function, and then somebody from NJOIT will contact you to help correct it. We cannot change your username or password or recover any of that information for you. And then something that is new to NJDP Online with the last 2 permit renewals is that permittees are now going to use the portal to access the facility submittal service to submit all other required documents. This would be maps, the SP3s, any WIP documents, and then anything else you want us to look at. So here on the slide, we have some condensed information in the form of guides and FAQs that we've created, and this is posted on our MS4 webpage if you get stuck at any time through that process. When you set up your account, please remember to keep your account information somewhere secure, as this is probably one of the main questions we get each May is, what is my login information? So the second document is a guide that walks you through the process of creating an online account and submitting the annual report that you can continually reference after this presentation. And then the last link is a guide to using the facility submittal service. This may be especially helpful since the FSS is new to these recent permit renewals. Use these guides as your first source for NJDP Online, but if you continue to have problems, feel free to reach out to your MS4 County Case Manager. All right, so that will bring us to the end of today's presentation. With that, I'd like to first thank you all for attending. And then before leaving today's training, we ask that you help us answer a set of short questions so we may make improvements to any future trainings. Completing this survey is going to be mandatory to receive a certificate of completion for this course. So be sure to list your first and last name exactly how you want it shown on your certificate. You can reach the survey by clicking the link on the slide right here at the top. And then we're also adding the link to the chat. And then if any questions or comments arise after today, you can communicate those with us via email, the address listed here on the slide. You can also find our county case manager list that we've referred to a couple times, and then you can direct any individual questions there as well. So let's now use the remaining time to fill out the survey, ask any live questions, and then anything that's unaddressed in the chat. And then once again, thank you guys for your attention throughout the training, and we look forward to working with you all. We're going to hang on for, maybe 10, 15 more minutes. Feel free to complete your survey, ask us your question. We're going to answer the rest of the questions in the chat. If you'd like to unmute yourself, raise a hand, and then we'll handle it that way if you need. But if you've done the survey and have no more questions, you're free to leave. Thank you, guys.
Colin?
Hi, good morning.
Hello. I'm not seeing the survey link on the call-in.
Do you have
Where can I
access to the
find
chat at all? Do you have access to the chat when you call in?
No, I do not.
Okay. If you will let me know your email real quick, and then we will send that to you that way.
Okay. It
Go
is
for it.
DPW, the number 2, at Rochelle Park, NJ.gov.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.